Hello and welcome back to T1D Academy. I'm Harold, your host. My son Liam and I are glad you could join us for this video. The information shared here is based on what we've learned over the last decade of living with and managing type 1 diabetes 24/7, 365 days a year. This is real-world understanding. It's not textbook theory. It's shaped by our experience, our mistakes, successes, and a lot of learning that we've both done along the way. In the previous video, we spent time debunking many of the myths people hear after a type 1 diabetes diagnosis. And I felt strongly that before we could really move forward with understanding, we needed to remove that baggage, guilt, and emotional, mental, and psychological weight that those myths often create. I know that they did create them within me and my wife when Liam was first diagnosed. Once that weight has been lifted, I think we're in a better place mentally, and we're able to begin building a solid, accurate foundation and understanding of exactly what T1D or type 1 diabetes actually is, and some of the basic but critical concepts behind managing it. And that is the focus of this particular video. My goal here isn't to overwhelm you with science terms or complicated diagrams, although we have created a few simple visuals that we will use to help make the processes in the body easier to understand. Rather, it's to give you a clear mental picture of what's happening behind the scenes inside of the human body and why things like highs, lows, and insulin dosing begin to make more sense once you understand what's occurring and why it's occurring. So let's start with what happens in a body without type 1 diabetes. So when food is eaten, digestion begins. When you eat food that contains carbohydrates, things like sugars and starches, enzymes in your digestive system begin to break that food down into glucose. Glucose is the body's primary source of energy. Once digestion does its job, that glucose enters into the bloodstream, which in turn causes the blood glucose level to rise within the bloodstream. If you've never thought about blood sugar before, that rise after eating is completely normal. It happens in everyone, people with type 1 diabetes and people without. In someone with a normally functioning immune system and pancreas, the pancreas senses that rise in blood glucose almost immediately. In response, it releases a precise amount of insulin. That insulin acts like a signal. You can think of it as opening the cell doors, which then allows the glucose to move out of the bloodstream and into the cells. At the same time, insulin tells the liver to stop releasing stored glucose, which the liver does. That's one of the functions of the liver, is to store glucose for emergency needs. But it tells the liver to stop releasing that stored glucose and to pause making new glucose. Muscle and fat cells respond by pulling glucose into the cells, where they can be used immediately for energy or stored for later use. This all happens in tight coordination, like a well-oiled machine, all day long, meal after meal, without people even thinking twice about it. And that's why people without type 1 diabetes don't usually see large sugar spikes after eating. The response is nearly immediately. It's precise and it's automatic. Once glucose is inside the cells convert that glucose into energy, the fuel, which of course the body needs to survive and thrive. And the process continues again and again and again the next time food is eaten. Now let's talk about what changes in someone that has type 1 diabetes. As I shared in the myths video, type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. That means the immune system, which is supposed to protect the body from infections, mistakenly targets and destroys healthy cells. It's important to understand that the immune system is not weak or deficient in people who have type 1 diabetes. Rather, it continues to do everything else that it's supposed to do to protect the body from infections. The problem is that it's doing more than it should be doing. So in addition to the normal protective work that the immune system engages in, it also targets and destroys the insulin-producing beta cells inside of the pancreas, mistakenly identifying them as foreign invaders. As the immune system continues destroying those beta cells, the pancreas becomes increasingly unable to produce enough insulin. That's the key difference. Digestion still works, food still gets broken down into glucose, glucose still enters the bloodstream, but in people with type 1 diabetes, there is little to no insulin available to move that glucose into the cells to be converted into energy. Without insulin, glucose cannot enter the cells. It stays in the bloodstream and the blood sugars naturally rise. The more blood glucose you have in your bloodstream, the higher levels exist and the higher that goes within your bloodstream, which results in a higher blood glucose number when you do finger sticks. Meanwhile, the cells, despite having plenty of glucose nearby, are unable to access it. They are essentially starving for fuel. They're starving to death. This is where the playground slide analogy helps understand this concept. Imagine a playground slide. The ladder leads up to the slide. The ladder leading up to the slide represents the bloodstream. The slide itself represents the path into the cell. The kids waiting at the top, let's consider them glucose molecules, all right? In a normal situation, kids climb the ladder and go down the slide smoothly. There's a steady flow. They go up, they sit on the slide, they slide down. Next kid goes up, sits on the slide, slides down. Rinse and repeat over and over and over again. In type 1 diabetes without insulin, it's like someone sits at the top of the slide and refuses to move. Kids keep climbing up the ladder, but no one can slide down the slide. The ladder becomes crowded, glucose piles up in the bloodstream, and even though there's plenty of glucose available, none of it can get where it needs to get because, again, that one kid at the top of the slide is not willing to go down the slide. Or in this analogy, the glucose is just sitting outside of the cell, unable to get inside of the cell. So naturally, blood sugar goes high, cells don't get the energy they need, and that's when symptoms and complications of type 1 diabetes begin to appear. Because people with type 1 diabetes cannot make enough insulin, or not at all, insulin must be supplied from outside of the body. Insulin is optional for no one. Every human being needs insulin to survive. People with type 1 diabetes need to replace what their body can no longer produce through injections, known as multiple daily injections or MDI, or through an insulin pump of some sort. There are plenty of insulin pumps, and we'll get into those eventually. Now let's talk about high blood sugar and low blood sugar and why they happen. High blood sugar happens when there isn't enough insulin for the amount of glucose present in the bloodstream. When this goes on for too long, the body starts looking for another fuel source. It begins breaking down fat, which produces acids called ketones. When ketones build up faster than the body can clear them, a dangerous condition called diabetic ketoacidosis, or DKA, can develop. DKA is a medical emergency. Left untreated, it can lead to severe illness, coma, and even death. This is why insulin is so critical in type 1 diabetes, and of course those without type 1 diabetes. Insulin is critical to everyone. Just making that perfectly clear. Low blood sugar happens when there is more insulin present in the bloodstream than there are carbohydrates available to match it. In simple terms, insulin is in the bloodstream with nothing left for it to work on. When that happens, insulin continues doing its job anyway. It keeps signaling cells to pull glucose out of the bloodstream. At the same time, insulin tells the liver to stay quiet. Normally, the liver acts as a backup generator, releasing stored glucose when blood sugar starts to fall. But insulin shuts that system down, so backup doesn't turn on when it should. And even if it does try to turn on, those glucose reserves can sometimes already be depleted, leaving very little left to release into the bloodstream. So blood sugar drops faster and the body loses its ability to fix the problem on its own. The brain, which depends almost entirely on glucose for fuel, is the first organ to notice. That's why symptoms like shakiness, confusion, dizziness, fatigue, and even loss of consciousness can occur if a low is not treated quickly enough. This is why low blood sugar is treated as an immediate priority and an immediate danger in those with type 1 diabetes. Because I didn't learn this until 2 years after Liam had already been diagnosed, and because I think it's a critical game changer in how people think about hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar, I want to briefly introduce one more concept that a good friend of mine taught me. I didn't know about this early on. I was introduced to it in 2018, 2 years after Liam had already been diagnosed, again, by a type 1 diabetes savant, and he's really a T1D whisperer, and many of us in the FED community consider him that, and he's a good friend of mine, Eric. The concept is something called a GLUT3 transporter. Not a concept, it's an actual factual thing that occurs in the body. There's something called a GLUT3 transporter. GLUT3 transporter is a specialized glucose transporter found primarily in the neurons in the brain. It has an extremely high affinity for glucose, meaning it can pull glucose into the brain cells even when blood sugar levels are almost non-existent, when they are very low and almost undetectable. What this acts as is a built-in survival mechanism. It helps ensure that the brain continues receiving small but critical amounts of glucose during a hypoglycemic event, which buys time and offers a layer of protection. Learning about this helped me be much more confident about what was happening inside of Liam's body, and more importantly, his brain during lows. We'll go into much more detail in a future video on this topic. And I didn't want to introduce the GLUT3 transporter in such a way that says you don't have to worry about lows. You most certainly do have to worry about lows. But why I introduced the concept of GLUT3 transporter in this video is because had I known about this transporter early on in Liam's diabetes diagnosis journey, it would have really made me less worried. I am still worried, but I am less worried that there is an immediate now impact. If I don't get it done right now, it's going to cause death. That was what I was afraid of. So knowing that there is a mechanism within the body, the GLUT3 transporter, that ensures that small quantities of insulin are constantly being made into the brain, being sent into the brain through the neurons, regardless of how low that you were, 30s, 40s, sometimes even high 20s. We've never gone any lower than that, but we have gone into the 20s twice, 30s multiple times, 40s quite a few times. But knowing that there's a mechanism in the brain that's still sending small quantities of glucose into the brain, which is the most critical organ to take care of, really made me able to breathe. And that was the purpose I introduced that concept in this video. Managing type 1 diabetes is a constant balancing act. It's like being a juggler. You've got many things to consider: insulin, food, activity, stress, illness, hormones, and so many other things. And they're all in motion at the same time. And a change in any of them can change everything. Any one of them can change how much insulin the body needs or doesn't need at a given moment. But while type 1 diabetes is lifelong, it is not a life without possibility. It's something you learn how to take care of daily. It becomes part of your life, but it's not something that defines who you are or limits what is possible. It's something that you come to realize that you just need to do and take care of in order to stay healthy, and that's it. That's as far as you let it go. You don't let the mental, emotional baggage weigh you down. You realize this is what is required in order to keep myself or my child healthy, and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to teach my child how to do that so that when they grow up, they're able to do it themselves. But that's it. That's where you let it cut off. You do not let it become emotional baggage that weighs you down and creates a lot of undue stress. Just take it for what it is. It's type 1 diabetes. It requires management. As a result, you have to learn to manage it properly. That's it. Those 3 things. In future videos, we'll go deeper into many of these topics: highs, lows, insulin timing, the honeymoon phase, stress, illness, hormones, and much more. Each one on its own without overwhelming you. Now, before wrapping up, and as a disclaimer, the content on the T1D Academy YouTube channel is for informational purposes only and should not be interpreted as medical advice. As I've stated before, I am not a doctor nor a healthcare provider. Everything shared here is based on lived experience and personal perspectives only. Please consult with a qualified medical professional for diagnosis, treatment, and individualized medical advice. If you found this helpful, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and turning on notifications so you don't miss future videos in this series. Until the next video, take care of yourselves and take care of each other, and remember, you've got this. And Liam, as always, 143 AI +1. Take care.